Welcome this morning to all of you participants now online to our technology session of Tuesday of our second day. I'm very happy to have you back, and I'm very happy to welcome Xiu Liu from China. Jinghua, you can say a word on that if you like. Xiu Liu is a student, at least this is the information we have, at the School of Marxism at the Tsinghua University, where we have heard Zhao Wei on Sunday with a keynote. Her areas of research she holds, she says, is her focus on public health ethics, health law and bioethics, as well as moral education. She is participating in 2 different research projects, and since 2018, she has been a member of the construction of philosophy of psychiatry, a project supported by the Social Science Foundation of Beijing. In 2020, she also joined the philosophy of Karl Jasper's psychopathology, a project supported by the Humanities and Social Sciences Foundation of the Chinese Ministry of Education. We hope that soon also the philosophy of women will be studied in these projects. So, the floor is yours. Dear all, we are back now in our Zoom room to welcome Mouli Purkait to hear her talk, Unconscious Technology, an Individualistic Choice of Mankind. How this well fits to the question of the choices, as we have heard before and before our break. Dear Mouli,
yes, ma'am.
Yes. Are you ready to take the floor?
Sure, ma'am.
Wonderful. So we are ready now to hear the talk of Mouli Purkait. Mouli Purkait is a student at Presidency University in Calcutta. Her research interests are socio-political philosophy, ethics, existentialism, and philosophy of logic. She has received her master's degree in philosophy with ethics special paper from the Presidency University. Welcome to our session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for this opportunity to talk here. Thank you. Thank you so much. So now my topic for today is unconscious technology and individualistic choice of mankind. After submitting the paper here for the conference, I tried to talk to a few of my friends about this. I wanted to know their views, that what they think about the relationship between humanity and technology. So what they told me about from their views, that technology is essential, but somewhere humanity is getting blurred day by day. So after that, I had to talk to few more people from different age groups. So from the whole conversation, what I can conclude from their version, that technology is essential part and we cannot ignore it at all. But technology is the reason behind the moral degradation in people. Or I would like to analyze it in this paper. So at the age of the globalization is introduced, and the advancement of technology made possible the global interconnectedness, the diversity of ideas, opinion, values, religion, culture, language, music, etc. So if we see at present, our moral values became a cluster, like cluster of structural values, what we have since our birth, and then some imposed values, which is our influence, what influence we get from other cultures, other opinions, other ideas. And then some adopted ones which we want to choose to adopt. So if we see which is overall wholly affecting our choice making process. So at present, we are witnessing so many incidents all over the world. The wars, chemical weapons, and nuclear weapons, and everything. Again, global warming, and so somewhere people are trying to connect this global issues with the advancement of technology. But and they are claiming that humanity is destroyed by technology. So so if what is humanity? So humanity is the essence of humankind. So it has both positive and negative side. It is up to you which side you want to choose. And at the other hand, technology. Technology is neutral by nature. It is up to the user if that person want to use it positively or negatively. So if if we see at present, our end of the day, our choice is the last word. Whatever the situation may be, but our we are being of our choice, which is derived by our purpose, our intention, and our motive. So if we are trying to blame technology for that it is destroying the humanity in humans, then what we are trying to say is a creation of human which doesn't have any will to power of will, that is destroying a conscious human being's essence. So can we really I mean, is it possible? So if we take an example like digital technology, at present time we all are using digital technology. Without it, our life is difficult. So suppose a particular person, a young person, loves video games. At times we play a lot of video games. A particular young person who loves video games. At the same time, I am also an individual and I don't like video games so as others. So if you see that suppose at particular situation, an old lady is asking for help from that young person who is so engrossed in his mobile game. So so since he was so engrossed in his mobile phone and video game, he couldn't care to respond that old lady. So if a another person who has observed this particular situation and conclude that digital technology is reason behind the moral degradation of youth. So can we really generalize perceiving few particular instances? Can we really generalize? But at the same time, we all have heard the name Greta Thunberg. So she is also a young person. She's also a young person who belongs to this age of advancement of technology. But if we see, if she would have also used technology as an excuse that yeah, we are so much into technology and couldn't have take a stand for the world, then what would have the case? So but they are taking their stand. Not only Greta Thunberg, there are so many young people from all over the world fighting for different causes and set an example for humanity. Then if you try to conclude that technology is the reason behind moral degradation is youth, then you are actually doing injustice to these people. So at present time, at not only even these young people, if we see each and every year, each in each country, the people, so many people are getting awarded for their social work, their contribution for towards humanity. So if you think that they could have used they could have been engrossed in technology and could have blamed it for their engagement, but they didn't. They take that was their choice, that was their personal choice, that they want to make a difference. So so if you are generalizing that technology is responsible for their moral degradation, then what about them? So at present time, when we all are suffering in COVID pandemic, can you really imagine yourself without technology? can we live at present, excluding technology at daily life? So uh, we actually cannot do that. So what we can do, we can have a balance. While we make a decision, we should remember that the decision we make, that doesn't only limit it to us, but impacts other people also. So you, while you are making a decision, you have, there should be a proper balance between your reason and knowledge. So, in case of technology, we'll see the role of ethics became more prevalent than other times, because the we all have our choices, we all have our purpose, we all have our motive, but it is up to us. Like it is not about what tools we have in our toolbox, but which one to use. And ethics is there to guide the wisdom, to have the to guide, to have the wisdom to choose which one to apply. So as Leo Tolstoy said, the now is the only time. After that, there's no time in your hands. So now is the only time when you have the power. So if while you are making decisions, instead of blaming technology, take stand for yourself, and do before generalizing that humanity is getting blurred, remember that you have your role in that too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your talk. So we are starting to hear our next contribution in this morning session at the International Symposium for the International Symposium of the Association of Women Philosophers here at Paderborn University. And it is my pleasure to welcome Waltraud Ernst from the Johannes Kepler University from Linz. Waltraud Ernst got her PhD at the University of Vienna with a very interesting on a very interesting topic, talking about very interesting talk. She worked on many interesting topics. From 2001 till 2003, she worked on the erotic of economics and the erotic of the economics of sciences. I think these had really an impressive impact on the work in the realm of science. She was now for various years the manager of the Center of Interdisciplinary Studies of Women and Gender at the different universities and colleges such as Hildesheim, Holzminden, Göttingen. And she is now at the University of the Kepler University in Linz. This is enough. We are very happy. So Waltraud Ernst was for many years also active on the board of the IAPh. We should not forget to mention this. Thank you very much, Waltraud Ernst, for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for this very kind introduction. So, and I'm very happy to be here, even though only on the screen, with all of us at the symposium of the International Association of Philosophers. And thank you for organizing this, although pandemic made so much things so difficult. So the title of my talk is Discerning Patterns of Recognition. change patterns of decision making. And I think with this, I want to say what is at stake, because as the former speaker said, yeah, we decide to use technology, but who is we and who decides is maybe a little bit more complicated, and I want to tackle this question. So my starting point is a historical one, because, and so it fits to the overall conference theme, defining the future, maybe via rethinking the past, by rethinking the past. And so I start with rethinking the past in order to get help to define the future. So modern European science and technology has been obsessed from the beginning with elaborating categories of differentiation, discrimination, and hierarchization, especially regarding sex, gender, sexuality, and race of humans. Recently, Banu Subramaniam has made a book-wide study, starting with Darwin and his contemporaries, how this differentiation and the celebration of variation on the one hand, and the hierarchization of difference on the other hand, goes very much together. So although already challenged in the 20th century by feminist, decolonial, and queer SDS, these categories have entered computing, especially with machine learning and artificial intelligence, often unconsciously as patterns of recognition. So the methodology of pattern recognition is at the very heart of machine learning and of artificial intelligence, and I will go a little bit deeper into this in a minute. But my argument is that, contrary to the promises of high-tech advocates, the mathematical models constituting algorithms and artificial intelligence do not necessarily provide more objectivity when pervasively installed as automated assistants or even sole method for decision-making and discernment in everyday life. So I think this is a problem. I go off like this further. Instead, they are accused to reinforce discrimination concerning, for example, schooling, loans, health insurance, and even threaten democracy as weapons of mass destruction, as Cathy O'Neill called this with her book in 2012, and where she shows how the decision-making by algorithms installed in US decision-making procedures about these social aims to get schooling, to get loans, to get health insurance. There is some discrimination installed within the methodologies of this kind of decision-making. And Ruha Benjamin goes even a little bit further. She said, automation is we need to understand as encoded inequity and amplifying racial hierarchy while appearing neutral. And this is the danger, that it seems to be neutral, but of course it has been programmed by humans in a system which works with social hierarchies. And an example from Austria, there's actually algorithmic profile is criticized of discriminating job seekers through privileging some men by predicting lower chances for other groups differentiated via demographic data. And this is also the a part of the methodology of AI, that it takes data from the past of an individual to propose the future for this individual, to do prognosis in a way that this individual will be affected. And if we install in Austria, it is called AMS, algorithms for algorithm for job seekers. It is now in front of the court. If the job seeker service can install this algorithm for so-called more efficiency for its money and program. So I think we have to ask questions for data analysis with AI. We have to ask which data are available. And we have to ask which data appear relevant or important. And we have to ask who is defining the patterns and mechanisms of machine operation and analysis, and along which criteria. And we have to ask which criteria are the basis for sorting, evaluation, and categorization, because we can't just take over demographic data as the best we have when these data are related to a colonialism and patriarchy of the last centuries we don't want to have in the future. So we have to reflect on this. And we have to reflect on how does gender and the plurality and particularity of bodily existence become relevant in these processes. So I want to go into this a little bit deeper. What is the relevance of gender plurality and particularity of bodily existence? But if you think it with data, are data from all genders taken to be important in the same way? Are the machines taught about the abundant diversity and plurality of gendered bodies, or is it too complicated? Do we want to install a system of binary gender in a new system, whereas our constitutional courts, at least in Austria and in Germany, allowed a third gender, a third option to categorize oneself and to be categorized. So this is a simple idea, but it seems to cause problems for programming in the systems. Is there room for taking ambivalence and change of the natural cultural materiality of living gender bodies into account? This is maybe even more complicated to program, because we are with programming categories, a stable category is envisioned, but living matter, living organisms, living bodies, and living humans in especially all the way changing and much more ambivalent than simplified categorization system can take into account until now. So how are the interactions among the materiality of machinal and bodily existence conceptualized? There, I think we have to challenge artificial intelligence and highly paid computer science experts, because there we want something better, more complicatable interactions possible than these two simplifying systems. Is there a conceptual space for constant becoming of living beings? I think this is a very important question. If if a system wants to have a reliable working for living beings. So again, what is the relevance of gender plurality and particularity of bodily existence? How can we conceptualize the body as situated in social hierarchical environments within data collection and analysis? So computer science often tries to isolate a specific data into a mechanism, but we have to ask and demand that data is considered as something to be isolated, but as being situated in social hierarchical environments. And therefore, we have to ask, is there a methodological reflection and representation of a dynamic conception of matter and nature, not as fixed entity, but as constantly changing, as Karen Barat has developed this in her path-breaking book, Meeting the Universe Halfway in 2007. Who counts as standard as norm and normality, and therefore as reference point for the measurement of the sick and the healthy body? This connects back to the first speaker of today, Xiyu Lui, who also discussed the management systems and the data collection systems for mental health in China, and how this relates back to society. How are these questions transferred into the computational artifact? We have to scrutinize this, I think. And therefore, I want to now go into the concept of recognition. What are patterns of recognition, this method of machine learning, which is proposed to us as the newest idea and the functioning of big data, of many data. And I think we have to question the way these patterns of recognition are installed at the moment to get a better technology, because we have to think about what is the meaning of recognition. There are different meanings of recognition, and this is, gives an ambivalence of the concept. Recognition means appreciation, acceptance, acknowledgement, approval, and acclaim on the one hand. But on the other hand, it also means identification. And so in the first, in the appreciation, there is, of course, a valuing gesture connected with it. But if you say if you mean identification, it seems value neutral. So this ambivalence of the concept gets even more complicated if we realize that recognition means also knowledge, realization, cognition, finding, and insight. To recognize that something is the same or the different than something else. But again, there is this valuing gesture installed in this concept, in the aspect of confirmation, affirmation, verification, and validation. So I think recognition is quite a complicated method of if we think about it in an epistemological framework. So I want to ask, can we recognize what we cannot identify? Because a lot of the machine learning, who identifies? The machine doesn't identify. The machine recognizes patterns, but identification is a much more elaborated process when it comes to human recognition. Is identification a precondition for recognition? So if we can't recognize, maybe we can't, if we can't identify, maybe we cannot recognize. How to diffract patterns of recognition, as Karen Barrage suggested in her book, that we need to diffract patterns of social hierarchy, of social value systems, in order to recognize better. How to dissolve categories, stereotypes, patterns of command and control, as Donna Haraway asked already in her acclaimed Cyborg Manifesto in 1985. So there is something to do, I think, still with the mechanisms of recognition installed in machine learning and artificial intelligence. And so I want to ask how to recognize differently, how to change the patterns we are able to recognize. Because of course, we as humans also do very much in recognizing patterns. We recognize gender performances in the public sphere. We very fast categorize persons as female or as male or as women or as men or as transgender or as ambiguous gender. And maybe we can also work on our own patterns of recognition to be able to recognize more forward-looking, more ambivalences. And maybe then we can teach these these diffracted patterns or these changed patterns, these ambivalent patterns also to the machines. So, for this, I want to go get some help from feminist and decolonial epistemology, and propose a methodology from Sheila Sandoval. And I want to read this quote from her. The means for entry to counter hierarchies. The means for entry is the methodology of the oppressed as a set of technologies for decolonizing the social imagination. We were speaking yesterday already about the social imagination, which is so important for defining reality. And she goes ahead and says, these technologies, semiotic perceptions and deconstruction of supremacy, the meta-ideologizing of signification, the differential perception and deployment of consciousness are all processes that are guided by democratic, the practitioner's commitment to equal distribution of power. And she developed this methodology of the oppressed in her book with the same title in 2000. And I want to go a little bit deeper into her methodology and speak about these five technologies of the methodology of the oppressed. The first one is sign reading. So we have to be able to decipher signs and understand themselves in an hierarchical reality. For whom does the sign serve? Do some service, and for whom some causes it some problems. And we need to deconstruct the meanings of these signs. So we have to look behind the hierarchy. And we have to do some meta-ideologizing. This is the act of separating form from its dominant meaning in order to lead it to a different meaning. And we have to use democratics as the operation of appropriating dominant ideological forms and using them whole in order to transform their meaning. So we have to work on the sign and on the meaning at the same in the same way, and we have to orient ourselves within a differential movement, in a movement against the hierarchization of the world. So Sheila Sandoval connects these different movements with this quote: "These energies revolve around each other, aligning and realigning in a field of force that is the differential mode of oppositional consciousness." And it's a cyber consciousness. And she is able, with this concept of the cyber consciousness, to go beyond a bodily identified subject of feminism or of decolonial movement, but it's the consciousness which counts. So it's her idea of the body which helps us, I think, in this connection. Sheila Sandoval's idea of the body is as nodes in fields that are able to constant reapportionment of space and boundaries and realignments of oppositional powers. And this leads to transformation of the self. So under postmodern disobediences of the self blues around the edges shifts in order to ensure survival, transforms according to the requisites of power, all the while under the guiding force of the methodology of the oppressed, carrying with it the integrity of a self-conscious awareness of the transformations desired, and above all, a sense of the impending ethical and political changes that those transformations will enact. I think this shows that it is the necessity of transformation of individuality in the face of oppression, in which knowledge is elaborated for overcoming suppression in general. And this leads to the collective movement of epistemic activism. And I define this as a consciousness as political and ethical subjects. So the accountability also of technological change and the relatedness and relationalities of related subjects is also part of this activism, and the awareness of vulnerabilities and pervasive solidarities, and the training of communication practices and collective action, and so we have to redirect technoscientific research and computing, rethinking human-computer interaction. Who gets enabled and who gets empowered?
Dear Waltraud, we have all in all still 5 minutes, even either for you or for the discussion. Yeah.
Okay, I want to show just what we did last year in the Ars Electronica Festival. We did, as an institute, a project with the title "How to Become a High-Tech Anti-Discrimination Activist Collective," where we invited, and you can find this on our website. And we invited Lisa Nakamura and Safia Omoya Noble to speak. we did some participatory workshops and to train ourselves with these methods of recognizing and identifying differently, and also work together with computer specialists and to become together a high-tech anti-discrimination activist collective. And these are my references. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Waltraud.